Hi, my name is Allie Berry, and I'm a product manager on the Visual Studio Copilot team. Today, I'm going to be talking you through how you can boost your productivity with Visual Studio and MCP servers. I'm sure if you've attended any of the other MCP Dev Days event sessions over the past couple of days, then you've probably been hearing a lot about VS Code. But I'm here to switch the tone a little bit and talk about Microsoft's other beloved IDE, Visual Studio, and the MCP features that we have in there and how you can actually use it to really boost your productivity and streamline some of your development processes. So let's get right into the agenda and talk about what I'm going to be covering today. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction of some of the features that we have available in VS and how you can kind of get started using MCP in Visual Studio. This isn't a beginner session, just an FYI. So I'm not going to really explain what Model Context Protocol is from scratch. I'm just going to kind of dive into some of the scenarios and how it can be useful in your development. But if you are interested in learning more about what MCP is, how it works, and some of the basics, there are a ton of resources online, including the Let's Learn MCP event series that Microsoft sponsored a few weeks ago. So myself and a whole bunch of other awesome people at Microsoft, we put together this series of learning MCP from scratch, really just what is it and how does it work behind the scenes. So if you are interested in learning some of that beginner information, all of those streams are available on YouTube. We have streams that were done in VS as well as VS Code, and then a bunch of coding languages and spoken languages as well. So there's really something for everybody. I would recommend checking that out if you're totally new to Model Context Protocol. But otherwise, I am just going to start with, what are the features that we have available in VS and what you can get excited about and what we're currently working on to make the experience even better than what we have available today. And then from there, I'm kind of just going to jump into a live demo. I have a little bit of a backend enterprise scenario kind of simulation setup. So I'm going to dive into that after I give a quick overview. But yeah, let's jump into some of the features that we have available for MCP and VS. Let's jump to this. So how can you actually get started with Model Context Protocol in Visual Studio? So today we actually have one way that you can add server connections in your projects. So that would be by adding a .mcp.json file into your solution directory and then using JSON to specify any servers that you want to connect to. So that's the way that we have right now. We're planning to add even more streamlined and better ways to connect to servers in the future. But right now, what you would do is just add that JSON file, and then you can find those JSON snippets online. So I put a link here to the MCP repo on GitHub, the servers list. So I'm sure a lot of you, if you're familiar with MCP, you've seen this. If not, I would definitely recommend checking it out. That's where you can find a list of a whole bunch of MCP servers that can be really helpful to connect to. And then if you select any of those repositories that are listed within the list, then they'll all have a link or a snippet of JSON that you can just add, copy and paste directly into your local MCP JSON file. And then that'll add the connection to that server. So like I mentioned, kind of hinted at before, we have even better ways that are coming to Visual Studio that are going to make it easier than ever to kind of connect to those servers. So we're going to be adding ways to have one-click install from the web. So instead of having to copy and paste that JSON, we are looking to add a functionality where you'll see a little button that just says install in Visual Studio, and then that's all you have to do. There's no copy and pasting. You just click that button directly from the web, and it makes it easier to kind of connect to that server. We're also looking at things like a UI flow to add servers. Instead of having to copy and paste the JSON, you can go through more of a first-class native UI experience, as well as a browsing experience directly in Visual Studio from registries, which will make it even more easy and streamlined to add those connections to servers. So as you can see, the MCP ecosystem is continuing to grow and expand, and there's more features coming out pretty much every day at this point. So there's a lot to get excited about as far as how you can connect to these servers. So in Visual Studio, we also have two awesome ways that you can manage servers. So we really thought about, where are you working, and how can we make it as easy as possible to manage connections to these servers, no matter where you're at in your development flow. So right now we have two ways. We have within the MCP JSON file itself via code lens, and then we also have a way to manage servers in the tool window directly in Copilot chat. So as you can see, we have those two screenshots here. The one on the top is the code lens. So we have a bunch of ways that you can sort of interact with servers directly from the little gray text pop-up that will appear above each server name that you have configured. So from there, you can manage authentication, inputs, stop server, start server, really anything that you can think of that you might need to do with an MCP server. This is how you would be able to do it. And then there's another entry point from the little tool picker window directly in Copilot chat. So say you're doing something with Copilot and you want to manage either the tools from an MCP server or the server inputs or authentication or restart the server or manage permissions. We also have a way for you to do that directly from the chat windows that you don't have to jump to the JSON file every time. So really gives you that flexibility to manage the servers in the fastest way possible, no matter what you're doing. So authentication is another really big thing, specifically for remote servers with MCP. So I'm excited to announce that right now, available, we have Visual Studio Keychain authentication integration. So any servers that authenticate with Microsoft Entra or with GitHub accounts, you will see this pop up for when you're asked to authenticate the remote server. And it'll give you the option to select any of the accounts that you have logged in on Visual Studio and just easily authenticate directly in the IDE, which is really awesome. So that's right now the only authentication that we support, but in the very near future, we are going to be adding support for external OAuth providers as well. So that gives you the flexibility to be able to connect to any remote server, not just ones that use GitHub or Entra. You can authenticate with Okta or really any external OAuth provider, which is exciting that we're adding that extra functionality. And with that being said, I guess that covers all of my slides. So I'm going to jump right into the demo. So I'm just going to switch over to my Visual Studio. Now we're in Visual Studio. So we're going to jump right into a real world workflow. And that's going to be debugging an incident, fixing the issue, opening a pull request, all from Visual Studio without ever having to leave your flow. So the app that I'm using today is called Incident Responder. It's a little mock backend enterprise e-commerce platform that I created for the purpose of this demo. It kind of simulates a simplified version of that e-commerce platform. So I'm going to walk you through the architecture of this application. But yeah, since we don't have all day, I'm just going to use this sample mock application, but all of this is scalable. So if you have a enterprise situation or your enterprise repo or something that's a little bit larger scale than this, everything here that I'm showing you today is scalable for those situations as well. But yeah, I'll walk through some of the code that we're working with here. So yeah, e-commerce platform, we have 4 major components that you can see right here that are a part of this platform. So I'm just going to open up our payments service and take a look at our payments processor CS file. So here you can see that this service is basically just handling the payments of our e-commerce platform. So we have things like payment ID, amount, currency, customer ID, and this is just really where we're handling the business logic of payments behind the scenes for our platform here. So we've got a bunch of different methods that are used to process payments, and that can really just dive into the back end of handling payments on our e-commerce platform. The code here is not that interesting as far as MCP servers, but just giving you a little bit of a peek into what we're working with here. So this service basically just hands back end of payments. We also have another similar class here that is orders service. So I'll jump into the orders processor file a little bit here. Similar thing, we're working with order ID, customer ID, the items, total amount, order status, and then a bunch of methods that can help to kind of process orders. So yeah, process order. We've got validate order, really, again, just business logic that is handling orders behind the scenes for our e-commerce platform. And then the real interesting stuff that I want to dive into here is actually our MCP servers. So we have two custom MCP servers that are going to call into our metrics and query our logs for the back end of our e-commerce platform. So while there are a lot of servers that are available online that can give Copilot access to helpful resources, so you know, look at that GitHub MCP repo, and you can see a list of all of the available servers that are open source and that you can connect to really easily. But there's also a lot of value in creating custom servers for enterprise scenarios. So it's really easy to create an MCP server from scratch. We walk through that in the Let's Learn MCP series. So if you are curious about that, I would definitely take a look at how you can build a server from scratch there. But yeah, this just really helps you to give fine-grained control over the context that you're providing to Copilot and make sure that everything is remaining governed under your enterprise sort of scenarios and your policies. So yeah, using custom MCP servers is really helpful for plugging into the data and resources in your company. So for this example, we're going to be using a metric server and a log query server. So I'm just going to walk through the kind of architecture of them is very similar, but they do different things. So I'll just give you a walkthrough of each. For the metrics one, we have some metrics tools. Well, sorry, I'll start with the metrics service first. It's a little more natural of a flow, but we have the metrics service, kind of similar to the order service or the payment service, but this is basically just giving us some helper methods that will help us to access metrics from our e-commerce platform. So since this is kind of a simulated environment here, we're kind of just using some simulated data. But like I mentioned, you can kind of plug this into wherever your data lives. So simulated data, but you can plug into your real world scenarios. So if your data lives in a Postgres database, you can use one of the pre-built Postgres MCP servers to actually access this data, or you can build one from scratch. Really, the world is your oyster on how you want to plug into your data, but there are ways to configure MCP servers for whatever sort of backend or infrastructure that you're working with. So here we're using custom servers and some simulated data, but just know that all of this is scalable and all of this is, you can use this to plug into wherever your data might live. So we have, yeah, these helper methods. We have generate the metrics, alerts, and this is just going to give us a little bit of a behind the scenes. And then here we have the tools. So this is actually going to call into our metrics service file and access those helper methods and create or turn them into tools that are accessible from our MCP server. So here we can see we have the tools, and then we have get metrics. So this is going to retrieve the system metrics, and this actually plugs into some of those methods that were defined in the metric service class. And then we have another tool defined down here that is going to get the alert status. So we have, if we have any alerts that might be, the error rate has passed the threshold or anything of that nature, that's where we would be able to get this information from our MCP server. The log query server is pretty similar. We have a log query service. This is just going to be the behind the scenes sort of methods. Not going to walk through this in too much depth. It's a lot of business logic. And then we have two tools that are defined here as well. So this is going to query our logs. So anything from, the order status or basically just logs on our e-commerce platform. So if someone tries to place an order, it'll give us the status of that order. It'll give us any kind of customer activity. So it's going to query into our logs. And then the second tool that we have here, we'll just get recent logs. So we're basically just defining two tools that can access our customer logs. And again, this could plug into wherever your logs might live. And I'll talk a little bit more about this when I get into the actual MCP JSON file. So let's take a look. Actually, going to take us back to the solution. Here we go. And let's open up the MCP JSON file. So I'm going to show you guys actually how these local servers are configured in the MCP JSON file. So let's take a look. And we can see this is basically just showing some of that JSON that we would find either, if you were connecting to an external server, this is the kind of stuff that you would find in those repositories. But you can also generate it yourself. It's pretty simple. The JSON sort of template is really easy to replicate, and it can plug into local servers as well as external servers. So, yeah, let's see. I'm going to peek into a little bit deeper one of the things that I mentioned before in the slides, and that's going to be the code lens. So as we can see above each server name, we are getting this little gray text that's showing up that's giving us the status of these servers that I have configured. So looks like this one is cached since I haven't used it in a little bit. But if we click here, we can actually restart the server from directly in here. And since it's cached, that means that the LLM, if we were to go to Copilot, it has access or it knows about the tools that are available from this server, even if the server isn't running, which is really helpful for performance and memory sort of scenarios. But yeah, it's great that Copilot can access or knows about the tools that are available from a server, even if it isn't running, so that it can understand, the full tool set of what's available to it. So now we have this server running. Here I can actually click stop, and then it shows me that there are 2 tools available with this server, which is great because that's what I showed that we have defined in the metrics server. Up here, what's interesting is that we're seeing with the log query server, there are inputs required. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more depth. And if I click inputs here, we can see that there is a value here. Basically, it's asking me for an input for the path to the log files directory. So since this MCP server is going to be querying into my logs, it wants me to give an input as far as, okay, where should I be looking for those logs to query into? So it looks like I have that input defined here. It might have just needed me to kind of refresh. And I'm just going to click OK. And now it's starting up the server. And let's see. I'm going to restart it. And it looks like that server is now also running. So same thing as down there. We have the functions that we can stop the server, manage inputs, take a look at the tools. So that's really awesome that we can manage servers directly in the MCP JSON file. That makes it really easy. So now what I'm going to do is actually jump into GitHub Copilot chat, and I'm going to show you another way that you can manage tools. So if you go into the tool picker window, I'm going to see the log query server and the metric server, which is great because I have those defined in my MCP JSON file. So I'm glad that they're showing up in the right spot over here as well. If you see this little arrow icon next to each server name, you're going to get access to those same kind of functions that you would get in the code lens in the actual MCP JSON file. So that's just kind of calling out like what I mentioned before. It's giving you the flexibility to be able to access controls for these servers in 2 different spots. So no matter where you're at in your coding flow, you can configure servers easily. So makes it really helpful. So yeah, just wanted to call that out here. I'm actually going to enable both of these servers. And yeah, now that I've kind of given a walkthrough of some of the behind the scenes that we're working with here, I'm actually going to use this app to simulate a common situation. I'm on call and I just got pinged that my payment service is throwing a whole bunch of null reference exceptions in production. And the system metrics are showing elevated CPU and memory usage and error rates, and something is clearly wrong with my application here. So I'm going to try to use agent mode and MCP servers in Visual Studio to help to diagnose this issue and come up with a fix. So what's really exciting here is that we are going beyond just generating code with Copilot. We're going to use these tools that I've configured and use them to help us diagnose and solve a real world problem. So we're not just writing code and filling method bodies anymore with gray text in Copilot. We're actually going beyond that, and it's getting access to my whole development stack, and it's going to help me to solve a real problem that I have. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Copilot chat, and I'm going to try to ask it to help me understand the errors that we're seeing that I got pinged about. since I'm on call. So I'm just going to ask get metrics oh, for payment service to see error rates. Um, and let's see what we get here. So Copilot is generating a response. And we're helping to get the metrics from payment service. So it's starting to explore the workspace and understand the structure and retrieve the metrics from my actual project here. So as we can see, I'm also getting a request. It's going to run this get metrics tool that I defined in my metrics server. And before it's doing that, it's actually asking me for permission, which is really great because we are valuing security in terms of MCP servers, and we know that there is some inherent risk with running tools that might be defined in external places. So it's awesome that we're getting that extra check here to make sure that this is actually something that I want to do before it goes ahead and runs that tool. So I'm just going to click allow, and it's running that get metrics tool that I defined in my metrics server. And now it's going beyond that and it's actually running again, get alert status. So it's going to get some of that information about any alerts that might exist in my project. And here we go. Let's see. We're getting some concerning metrics here that Copilot is helping me pull from my logs and from my metrics. We can see that we have a high error rate. We have some active alerts. Okay, so let's take a look and see if we can use Copilot to help me look into why this might be happening. So help me um, fix or help me address these metrics. So from here, it's going to search for some more context about the issues and analyze the problematic code to help to generate a fix. So we're going beyond even just looking at, it queried those metrics for me, but now we're going to use what it learned and help to actually fix the problem. So it's reading through some of the files in my code. And now it's actually using the log query server and going beyond, I asked about metrics. Now we're looking into the logs and starting to really analyze what is going on in my project. So I'm just going to go ahead and approve. So yeah, we're taking a look into the logs and we're trying to understand really what's happening behind the scenes here. Looks like it's identifying some issues. Like I mentioned before, I was getting pinged about a whole bunch of null reference exceptions. So it's identifying that, which is great to see. And now it's going to take a look into some of my code and try to diagnose a fix for some of the issues that we're having. So it looks like it generated some changes for my payments processor file. And now that it has generated those changes, it's actually going to validate that the changes compile correctly, which is great to see because not only is it generating those fixes for me, but it's actually going to be iterative and make sure that those changes are actually going to work and they're going to result in compilable code. So it's checking that that code is going to work behind the scenes. And it's actually going to continue from there and make more changes to help address the problem. So we had a little check-in point there, and it's not just going to go ahead and make a whole bunch of changes and then try to build the solution at the end. We're going to have a check-in point, and as we can see, it generated some code. It looks like the build failed, and we're going to try again. So it's iterating on my solution here, and it's not just trying one thing and then stopping. It's going to continue to build and it's going to continue to work until it has a working solution. So it's great to see that agent mode is iterative and it's helping me to really address the root of my problem. So as we can see, we're running .NET Build. Let's take a look at some of the changes that we have here and what the code is generating. So as we can see, we get this really nice diff viewer, and we're even getting some comments in the code that are kind of explaining some of the changes that it made. So we can see, yeah, we can see the changes that it's making. It's documenting its changes. I'm really happy with some of the changes that I'm seeing here from agent mode. Now we're gonna try rebuilding payment service. It looks like it might have gotten into a little bit of trouble here. We're seeing some failed commands, but like I mentioned, it's just gonna keep iterating until it finds something that works and also fixes my problem. So this is just saving me a whole bunch of time instead of combing through the code and trying to understand. I could manually read through my logs, I could manually read through my metrics, try to figure out what the problem is. But instead, with MCP servers, I can give all of that context to Copilot and say, try to figure out what's happening. And it looks like we're finally making some progress here. It looks like the build worked. And it's trying again to check in on how things are going. Um, and it's building my solution and it's coming up with a fix. Oh, and it looks like it even generated me a markdown file with a summary of some of the changes that it made, which is really helpful. Didn't ask for that, but we love to see Copilot being thorough. Um, so now we're also getting a summary here with the changes that it made. So it's also giving them to me directly in chat. This markdown file is new. I've never seen Copilot do this. So as like I mentioned, we're iterating and we're making new changes every day to Copilot in agent mode. So this might be a new feature. But yeah, it's great to see that it looks like it addressed those changes. So I'm gonna go ahead. I took a look at some of the code. It looks like the changes addressed some of the issues that we were having. I'm gonna look back at the payments processor, read through the code. And this is another really important part of using agent mode. It's not, Copilot can make mistakes. We can't just blindly accept code that is generated from agent mode. We need to make sure that we're going through and reading, and acting like a peer programmer. Copilot's not going to replace, the work that you're doing. It's kind of just like a peer or someone that, like another coworker that you might work with. So same as how that would work, you wanna make sure that you're reviewing any AI generated code and making sure that it meets your standards. And in this case, it looks like it does, so I'm gonna keep those changes. And yeah, now if we go into the Git changes here, we can see, we have those changes that were generated from Copilot. And what I really want to do here is I would really love to create a PR with these changes so that some of my other coworkers at my company can review these changes as well. And we can continue to iterate here and see if the Copilot generated changes are actually going to make a difference on some of the metrics and some of the errors and see and evaluate the performance over time. So right now, as we see in my MCP JSON file, I don't currently have a connection to the GitHub server, but it would be really great if I did. So I'm going to go into that GitHub uh, model context protocol repo that I mentioned before, try to find the configuration and show you guys how you can actually add a server from online by copy and pasting the JSON. So let's walk through. We have a whole bunch of servers that are listed here. Like I mentioned, there's the MCP ecosystem is huge and it is continuing to grow every day. So I'm just going to scroll through here and see. Yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff that we can do with MCP. So really, wherever your data lives, anywhere in your development stack, um, there's probably an MCP server that exists that can plug into it. And if there's not, like I mentioned, it's easy to create your own to plug into it. This is a frequent question that we get with Visual Studio. We know that a lot of Visual Studio developers are using Azure DevOps. And when we use, GitHub server for demos, we always get questions that are asking, when is the Azure DevOps integration coming? And lucky for you guys, there is already an Azure DevOps server for MCP that you can configure the same way that you would use the GitHub server that I'm going to be using as an example today. But if you use Azure DevOps, there's also a solution for you so you can plug into this the same exact way that you would plug into the GitHub server that I'm going to use as a demo today. So let's keep scrolling. there's a whole lot of servers. I'm going to look for G, try to find GitHub. Here we go. I'm going to click into the server and scroll down until I find that. So that JSON snippet. So this I'm going to just copy this, but really quick, I'm just going to show, like I mentioned before, we're going to be adding one-click install from the web for Visual Studio. So that's exactly what it would look like here. So it already exists for VS Code. If I were to click this button, Visual Studio Code would open up, and it would automatically install that server for me in VS Code, which is awesome. And we're also adding that functionality for Visual Studio as well. So super excited to see that start rolling out, and those install in VS buttons start to appear on some of your favorite servers. So let's jump back. Now that I've copied that JSON snip, I'm going to jump back into my Visual Studio, and I'm going to add in right in here. I'm going to stick it right in the middle, the configuration for the GitHub server. And I'm going to save. Oh, I need to add a comma. Save. Oh, since I'm sticking it in the middle, I need to edit the JSON a little bit. I had a double servers header there, so you don't need both of those. Oh, completions is jumping in to help me configure my code, and there we go. Looks like we have the code lens that's appearing above the GitHub server as well, and we can go ahead and connect to the server, just like we did with the other ones. And it looks like for this server, we have some authentication that's required. So we didn't have that before. So I'm going to take a look into how I can actually authenticate and provide my credentials to use this server. So I'm going to click auth. And I'm seeing the pop-up here, like I mentioned before, where I can easily I'm logged into my GitHub account in Visual Studio. Now I can go ahead and use those same credentials to authenticate with the GitHub MCP server. So I'm just going to click OK. And now it's providing my credentials to the GitHub server. So now I'm going to be logged in with my GitHub account, and I have access to any of the GitHub repos that I might have. So that is really awesome. I'm going to jump back into Copilot chat. First, I'm actually going to stage my changes, or no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let Copilot do that for me. So I am going to say, create a PR to merge these changes. So it's starting to search the workspace to understand the current state and create a PR with the changes that we made. So first, it's checking that this is a Git repository. We're getting the Git status. We can see that it's already currently in a branch called Fix Payments Processor Bugs. We have our changes ready. It's going ahead and just doing, there's a whole bunch of tools that are available with the GitHub server. Let's plug in here. It can create a branch, create a repository, it can do a whole bunch of things. There's actually 81 tools that are available. So we're getting a whole bunch of functionality that comes with this GitHub server that makes it really easy to use. It's even going ahead and generating a commit message for me that looks like it's really thorough. So it's creating that commit with the generated commit message. It's pushing those commits, and then let's see. Just got to review what agent mode is doing, getting the repository information, and creating a pull request using the GitHub API. Cool. Okay, so it looks like now it wants to use a tool, open new pull request. And it's using all of the information that I provided to it and that generated PR message. So I'm going to allow ran open new pull request. And perfect. I've successfully created the pull request. Let me get a URL. So now it's going to get that URL for me so that I can actually view that pull request on github.com. Pull request has been successfully created. We're getting a summary basically of what it did. And here we have that URL. It's still going, but I'm going to scroll back up. to this URL. And I'm going to take a look at that and jump back into my, oh, I'm going to jump back into my web browser and see if I can take a look at this PR online and see what Copilot did. Great. This looks like it's really thorough. So using MCP servers, that just saved me a whole lot of time in writing up this whole PR message. And now with this PR, some of my coworkers in this simulation sort of e-commerce platform, they're going to be able to review my PR, make comments, and we can continue to address these changes iteratively. So I'm really glad to see that we can use MCP and agent mode to really streamline my development process here. And if I didn't want to, I would never have to leave the IDE if I'd already had that GitHub server configured. But I wanted to show you guys how to do it in practice. But yeah, that's all I have today. So now we can see that the magic of agent mode and MCP really helped to streamline my development process. And yeah, be on the lookout for some really exciting new updates for using MCP servers in Visual Studio. We've got a lot of exciting stuff on the way just to make this whole process even easier than it already is. So yeah, thank you guys for joining today. I will see you guys next time.